He's the deal lawyer, and he's the certified coach. Find out what happens when these two professionals talk about universal questions and topics that require insightful answers. This week, the guys meet to talk about. This episode starts now.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. How is everyone doing this morning? Hey, PJ.
Yes, sir.
I am just so happy that my Facebook Live is working.
Yeah, it's good. I love it when technology is working. So we got what over there is the Boss Negotiators.
Oh no, this is the main group over here.
The main group,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. And I'm really pleased to see that it's working. And I'll let you know one thing. I said this last week,
okay,
that if you are into digital media and those kinds of things and communicating with your clients in that manner, it's very important to have also an email list, because you never know when any of these sort of platforms like Facebook, Instagram, or anything like that might go down. Hey, thank you everybody for joining. Hey, good morning,
couple of folks,
Mark,
Robin
Ray,
Cox. Good to see you,
Ruben.
Robin.
Good morning. Well, but the one thing I want to talk about is PJ.
Yes, Counselor.
I'm just blessed.
Okay.
We're all
Yes.
blessed, you know. I'm
Yes,
very,
we are.
very thankful. I follow this guy on Instagram who Gary V. I don't know if you heard of Gary V.
Vaynerchuk,
Yeah. And
Oh, yeah.
Gary V will sometimes make these statements like, "Listen, you just won the lottery. If you're a human being, you were born on this earth. You're not a tree. you know,
Thank goodness
you're
for
not
that.
a rock. You know, you're not any of these kinds of things. You're a living, human, breathing person that has an opportunity to do things. And then on top of all that, I was born in America.
Okay.
You know, and so
Okay.
that's a really beautiful, awesome thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if you carry it further, and this might apply to you as well, I was born in Texas, and Texas is a beautiful, awesome state, the best state in the union. I apologize to all my New Yorkers, all the California people and everything like that, but Texas is freaking awesome.
It's a humble brag. We can do a humble brag.
Humble brag. and then, on top of that, practice law, I do all these great things and all that kind of stuff. I live in a nice place. I do all these kind of great things.
And you have respect, and you have respect from your peers.
Yeah, those kinds of things.
And sometimes people can't wait to see you, Steve, right?
That's right. But one thing, that I don't want to take for granted ever and everything is that if, in fact, I am trying to rest
Yeah.
and, get ready for the next day, I think I should be able to do so without the concern or worry that someone is going to come into my place and shoot me.
Wow.
And so today we're going to talk about this huge issue, and we got to talk about it. We're going to have 3 takeaways on that, and we want people to chime in, to share your thoughts.
Yes, please share your thoughts.
Please do so. And we don't have all the answers or
No.
anything like that. We don't have that. And we want you to share this. We want you to comment down below. This is an open forum. Ultimately, what we like to do, PJ, is to help people,
That's
to bring
correct.
value and to help people.
That's exactly right.
And are you okay with talking about this?
I am. In fact, it has so many implications, not just legally, but also how we respect and treat each other as people. So we got to talk about it.
We do. And so there's 3 aspects I would like to address. And if anyone else wants to chime in, that's fine. Number 1, the whole issue of, and this is more of a legal deal, manslaughter versus murder.
Okay.
And then the other item is this whole concept of not talking about it a whole lot, because if you talk about it, somehow that'll hurt the chances of this particular trial staying in Dallas.
Wow.
And so balancing talking about it in transparency, but at the same time not causing some type of harm to the ability of it to be tried in Dallas. And then the last aspect of it is more of a psychology part of it, is just why are people fired up? Why is this so sensitive and everything? And maybe that's where we need to start, PJ.
Okay, yeah. Well, I think, again, whenever you see, we have to understand what trauma is, I think, right off the bat, right? So trauma is actually taken from the Greek word wound. And so when you have psychological trauma, we're talking about the mind having to process something that's a wound that's distressful, seeing an event that's highly distressful, an event that causes deep depression and maybe anxiety or even anger. So that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing people angry about this because, again, if a picture's worth 1,000 words,
Yeah.
and we're talking about video, so video is worth even more words, right?
Right.
And you're watching a video, perhaps, of some of this stuff, or seeing accounts or news feeds
Right.
showing another a victim or a person being taken out, and that person looks like you naturally are going to feel that person's pain, the empathy, and then naturally that's going to create a response. And if you keep seeing it and seeing it and seeing it over and over and over again, and then if other people tell you, oh, it's not really that big of a deal, that does a lot to traumatize a person.
Yeah, and so so if someone is experiencing trauma, and then they get the feeling that others may not necessarily are showing empathy, or maybe even criticizing the fact that you're experiencing trauma, what does that do?
Well, again, that's gonna make people very irritable at some point. It's gonna make people get to a place where they're not gonna feel safe around people. They might start avoiding people. They might start to withdraw. They may all of a sudden stop friending certain people. They think that's the side that's the victimizer, right?
Yeah.
And you'll start to see this response that just says, "I can't deal with this anymore," right? And so
Yeah.
now we have to talk about, well, how do we heal these people? And in
Yes.
this case, African Americans probably are not going to like sitting here watching video of yet somebody else, not African American, just taking out their life, and then somehow there doesn't seem to be any recompense on the other side. There doesn't seem to be any remorse almost sometimes from the other side about some of it, and it's just quickly swept under the rug. That has post-traumatic stress syndrome written all over it. If you keep seeing it.
Okay. And so, and you know, we got to keep in mind here that somebody lost their life.
Absolutely, that's the first thing.
And not only that, there is a family grieving.
That's right. Which is trauma, one of the effects of trauma.
And in fact, I believe the funeral may be even tomorrow or something like this.
Correct.
So this is just beyond comprehension, the pain that some people are suffering right now.
That's right.
It's amazing. Also, I would say also that the family of the officer, I would imagine they're feeling some pain as well.
Absolutely. It's going to happen on both sides, because at the end of the day, nobody planned this, I would like to think. But then, as life is, strange things will happen. And then, of course, there's going to be the idea of, well, I don't want to look like the bad guy here, so then that will affect how people will then retell the story. And then you've got other people who are going to fill in the story from the other side. And so that's why we have to talk about it, to your point, because what did happen? So
I just want to get to, this may be the whole transparency part of this and everything.
Gotcha.
So if an event like this occurs, and we decide not to talk about it, and instead say, oh, just let the system work or whatever, I think that's problematic. It could be problematic.
It's extremely problematic, because how most people heal, right? When you talk to people who sit down with somebody like me, a coach, or if they talk to somebody who's a psychologist, a clinical psychologist, what do? You lay down on a couch when you talk to the psychologist.
Yes.
And what do? They have you retell the story, and then they start to take it apart. Well, if it's not examined, then that trauma will keep happening over and over and over again, unless you have someone else to help you walk through it and help you see what the points are of it, so that you can heal. Then it never gets healed. And so it's kind of like never letting a wound heal. You just keep ripping the Band-Aid off, and it keeps getting reinfected. You have to keep the Band-Aid on. The psychologist is the Band-Aid to help you start to heal.
And if we don't, then if you don't work on the wound, and then another event arises that is a trigger, then we're going through the same process again. The wound has not been healed.
Correct.
The Band-Aid is ripped off. And somebody is dealing with pain. And they're not, they're going to act out, potentially.
That's correct.
And we're not getting anywhere.
That's right. And people will then form groups to get together, because they're going to want to talk about it, because that's the whole point about talking about it, right? You're going to try to find safe places, right? So you want to go talk to other people who can also relate to your pains. That means you'll see a bunch of African Americans wanting to get together, wanting to talk about this, but they may shut out talking to other people about it because they feel like, well, you just don't understand, and then that hurts the conversation, right? Right. So we have to have it to where African Americans can feel like they can go sit down and talk to somebody about this, because this is real. This is a problem in America. Whether the motives were this or that, still the imagery, the optics, does not play well.
It does not. And we just got a comment here from Brian Williams. He says, and this is part of the problem. Mr. Botham's not here to provide us with an answer. Was deadly force necessary? What about a warning shot? So over and over and over again, let's go to the wound again.
Okay.
In these cases, the person who you would want to hear from is the victim, and that victim is not there to communicate and tell us what happened.
That's right.
Instead, what we hear from is someone who shot the victim, who is then telling a story, and we inherently, when we tell stories, we're going to a lot of times tell the story to our benefit, and we're seeing the same thing start to play out, and so part of it is a psychological, I think, and where people are saying, "Oh, here we go again. I got this wound. The last time this person got shot was they were killed. Maybe the officer didn't get punished, or whatever it may be, or they felt like justice wasn't served, and we got that whole issue again."
That's exactly right. And I think again, the whole idea here is if we don't talk about something, imagine if we just stop talking about cancer will go away. Nobody would say that. That's preposterous.
Right.
So when we're talking about something like this, what we're hoping for is we want healing, because there's a mom that's got to bury somebody now.
Right.
Then there's a family on the other side going, well, I want to protect my child. I know my child is not a monster, but she's going to be portrayed that way. So you can only imagine on both sides this that's going on. So I would say, of course, people are going to get together. They're going to create groups. Right. Black Lives Matter popped up because of something just like this.
Right.
And then the alt-right popped up because of Black Lives Matter, right? So you're always going to see people banding together. So let's just get together then, and let's see if we can get a dialogue going. And I think that's what we're trying to do today, right?
Yeah, we're trying to do that. My thought on this is, I believe through my experiences that communication, transparency, open a dialogue is the best way to go about doing this, as opposed to not talking, not communicating, not being transparent, building factions and doing that kind of stuff. I think is detrimental, hurtful, and at the end of the day just keeps the problem going on and on and on and on.
I think it does, and it also says something about us. You started off talking about how we're in America, we're in a great nation, we have a lot of good things.
Yes.
And it seems like it would be a shame that the citizens of that country would just choose to ignore, or just say this isn't a topic that warrants conversation. Yet everybody that gets on social media, what are they doing? They're talking about it.
That's right.
So we'd rather do it digitally rather than do it face to face and actually really talk to someone who does have a different opinion, who has a different perspective. So I think almost as a people, have we really gotten to a place now where we're not acting like mature adults about something?
Wow. Well, I don't know. Well, I think there's a lot of trauma and pain out there.
There is.
I got a couple comments on my Facebook page that were, I thought, sort of outrageous in many ways, and I think maybe others may think, oh, maybe he's communicated about this again, and here he goes talking about race and all this. Hey, I would prefer to talk about money. That's my favorite topic. But right now, less than 2 miles away from where I rest my pretty face, something happened, and so we have to talk about it, because it's to not do it is just preposterous.
I think that's right. And so, speaking of that, that's what somebody like me would do as a coach and a behavioral scientist. I want to sit down and talk with people, because I'm going to learn things that I don't already know when people tell me their side of the story. So if you're wondering, so for those of us out there right now who are just livid that this has happened yet again, I'll just tell you, here's 3 things that you can do to help heal yourself in this process.
Thank you.
You are traumatized, right?
That's right.
So the first thing to do is don't click on every video about this, because if you keep feeding and feeding and feeding and feeding it, at some point you have to set a boundary and say, all right, I'm going to take in some of this, but don't become obsessed by this.
Okay, did you hear that, everybody? So let me break that.
Number one.
Don't go just crazy reading all this stuff and doing it over and over and over again because you could become obsessed with it.
Which then will lead to the more anxiety, more depression, and more anger, which then feeds the trauma. That's how we know someone's been traumatized. The second thing that you need to do is you need to seek out safe places. And what I mean by safe places, I just mean communities where you can sit down and talk about this, because it has to have an output. It has to have an output somewhere.
Yes.
And I don't think social media is the place doing it, just yelling and screaming at people back and forth, because you can hide behind your computer. I think you really have to go find other people who also understand, who are in that space, because you got to get this out. You got to talk about it. You can't. That's number 2. And number 3 is, and this might sound interesting or funny, but you have to process these emotions. So you need to sit down with somebody who is mentally healthy so that they can help you walk through each step, so that you can walk through the disgust, the anger, the hurt, the grievance, and then any retaliation thoughts you might have, whether you act upon them or just think them. But you got to process it. That's the third thing. Okay,
so you heard that. Number 1, you do whatever you can to not be obsessed about this, and that means you need to take a break, do some other things. You know, we all got things we got to go do. Number 2, you need to find a safe place. Social media is probably not going to be the absolute safest place, but it's a place. But you need to find a safe place. And number 3, you got to find a way to be able to process these emotions and everything. You have a comment over there?
Dave Moore's saying that this is sideways, so my phone, even though it's turned sideways, it's still giving it a horizontal. So let's see if we can fix that. Get it to switch, but it's not.
Yeah, but he's saying you are sideways. Oh, you're sideways on his screen. But so let's go now into, with all that being said and everything, let's go a little further into this. And so one of the main issues out there that's been communicated is, hey, be careful about talking about this, because if you communicate about this and the facts are out there, we've heard this from our district attorney.
Yes.
We've heard it from the mayor. We've heard it from some other folks as well. That what we don't want to happen is it communicate to such a point where it justifies a change of venue.
Right.
That
makes sense.
But my thought on that is, I think there is some relevancy to that, but at the same time, there's got to be a balance with transparency.
Yes.
Again, because of this trauma we're talking about.
Correct.
And so if I think the public senses that this is something that you should be hush-hush about, and the public senses, and I would imagine if I were part of the Jean family and everything, that I would be thinking, hey, I want more and more information, I want transparency. And if you don't have that, I think that creates a huge issue.
Yes, it does, because then people are going to ask, well, is this how we're going to handle other cases like this? Is this going to be a precedent now that we're going to do it this way?
Right.
And I think you have to satisfy at least some desire for people to get a true understanding of what's happening. Because I think right now there's a lot of people who still don't even understand what just happened, right?
Yeah.
Even though we've been reporting on it.
Yeah, and so with a change of venue, I am not a criminal lawyer. I am a deal lawyer. Yep. I'm a deal lawyer. That's what I do. I do deals.
That's right.
But there's 3 ways I think that can occur. This is me doing my little research. I like to do research from time to time. A change of venue with respect to a criminal trial, I think there's 3 ways. It could be done on the court's own motion. It could be done by, in this case, the DA.
Okay.
Or it could be done on motion of defendant. And so I would, if I had to guess, I would think the defendant would probably do that. No matter what, I would think at some point down the road, and there's a process to all of this too, that defendant would probably try to argue, I want this moved to another county or whatever.
Yes.
I mean, the reason why I would think that also is by the fact that they went and turned themselves in Kaufman County.
Yeah,
so I think that's coming on. I think that's going to happen no matter what. But again, that's just me thinking. But still, it's rare that it occurs. But there's 3 ways it happens. It would be on the court's own motion, and they would be balancing various factors of whether or not. Hey, good morning, Terry. Good morning. Balancing whether or not that they think that this particular defendant could get a fair trial, but on top of that also whether or not they can impanel a jury that they believe would be fair and be able to look at the facts.
Yes.
And this brings me to this point.
I want to hear this. I got to hear this.
Everybody, when you sit down and someone's presenting facts to you, or whoever you are bringing something to the table. You didn't just walk in the room with this clear mind and having no experiences. You're not a robot.
Agreed.
You are somebody that came from someplace that experienced all types of things, and you have experienced trauma. If you are being honest with yourself, one way or the other.
Yes.
And we're imperfect, but that's what the deal is.
I love that.
And so, if you have an African American juror, they're going to likely have experienced some type of past experience with the police. If you are somebody who is white, you're going to have some type of opinion and experience with the police.
That's right.
And it goes down the road. Everybody does. They have their own perspective and everything. And that's what you have to sort of understand. No matter what, whatever juror or whatever that sits down there is going to have some type of past experiences.
That's right. That's right. And then, of course, we know with those experiences comes a thing that we also share, which is confirmation bias. So different sides will just pick just the pieces of the argument that they're the most comfortable with because of that. They want to confirm. If I believe this is what's going on here, then I want to see that that's happened here, and I'm going to look at only things that will report that way. Right, so each juror then also would be bringing in also a bit of confirmation bias to it as well.
Right, and so I will admit here's my confirmation bias. But of course, I think I would be able to sit down and listen to the facts and everything. My confirmation bias. What bothers me on this is that they said the door was open. And that when I read that affidavit, and when I saw that in that affidavit that was promulgated by the Texas Rangers through a process of speaking with the defendant as laid out. And I'm sure that the reason why it was in that affidavit is because the defendant said that, is that the door was ajar.
Yeah, that is extremely problematic because as you read the story, there's getting keys out. And trying to put the key in the door, but then if the door is already open, then why did you get the keys out? And then I'm wondering if you're looking at your front door, there's certain things, markers on the outside of certain apartments that would tell you that it's not your apartment, like say perhaps that floor mat. So to me, there's a lot of things that are said here that sound even almost coached. Like I told him not to move, he didn't obey my commands, so therefore, which sets up the idea of I was fearing for my life. Even though I walked into a room supposedly that was dark with a gun and already, suspicious. So makes it difficult.
And the reason why we were talking about that is because an affidavit was released to the public.
Correct.
And so then when these bits and pieces of information come out, as they will through this criminal process, each time it's sort of it could be a trigger.
Yes.
It could be a triggering event.
Yes.
And so, if you see an affidavit come out, or a police report may be coming out, or something like that, or the toxicology report will come out at some point, or whatever. Each one in this step of the criminal process, it could be a triggering event. And so the question is whether or not, PJ, should you talk about it if that happens?
Well, again, if you're triggered, I think you do, but I don't know that you go on blast with a whole bunch of people. You probably have this discussion, but you probably have it with people who are closest to you, your inner circle, if you will. You probably have it with them because you're going to need to process it. Regardless. So you have to talk about it. But I don't think you get on social media and you blast it out to everybody and have these big groups of 20, 30, 50, 60 people who are all coming in just to talk about it. I think what you do instead, if you're the person who's sitting here getting triggered, is you have to sit back and say, who's my inner circle? Who's the people that I trust that I can talk about this with? Because it's not like people are not going to talk about this. The media's not going to let you not talk about this. So
And then part of it is also then if you think you're getting information, and maybe information needs to be publicly disseminated. You know, at times on some of these types of matters, it feels like certain information is not getting out.
Yeah. And I think in this world now, what we live in, again, people bring a certain baggage to the situation, and so as we know, if someone's caught in a quagmire, you're going to do whatever it takes to save yourself. We all know that self-preservation is always going to take precedence of anything else.
Yes.
So that's the scary part. So the scary part now is okay. Everything that we get, is it actually accurate? And then if it's accurate, is it all of the facts? Because we don't want to just take some of the facts that can be curated for you. We want all of the facts in the situation. We want to see something that's going to show us both sides and not just maybe only one mindset. So I do struggle with how we report things.
Yeah, and so what we have in front of us is something that's a process that's going to keep playing out.
Yes.
And I think we do have to make a conscious decision as we move along, understanding that there are going to be more and more of these types of moments, how to handle them.
That's exactly right. And then in the bigger picture might also be that, you know, what's happening to us as people, as humans, as people who believe in a creed and a code. You know, you're going to church every Sunday and you're talking about how you love people. Yeah, maybe people are going to church and maybe they're talking about this, and everybody's talking about how
this is live, Randy. This is live. Hey,
everybody's talking about how they can love one another and how we can unify, and we're supposed to be the United States of America. And that's one of the things that makes us great is our diversity. But then you keep getting stuff like this. So I have to ask the bigger question: what are we doing to, you know, look at our brothers? Are we our brother's keeper, or what are we doing to look at ourselves from the perspective of, are we really true to what we're saying our ideals are about how we treat each other as a community and as a civilization?
Yes.
Have we gone forward, or have we gone backwards?
I don't know. And so that's kind of that is a question we have to ask ourselves. But the last thing I think is this whole issue of a lot of discussion about whether or not the person should have been charged with manslaughter or murder. And the deal is we only have a few minutes left. But the bottom line is on that the difference between from what I understand, manslaughter and murder is intent. And and I think from what I'm gathering is that you would have to look at the intent at the time the person is pulling the trigger. And it's sort of an ABC thing. First, in order to have a murder or manslaughter, first you have to have a homicide.
Right.
And then once you have a homicide, then you have to determine whether or not there was intent or recklessness or anything like that. And then from there, then you look at defenses and those kinds of things. And in this case, it looks like, and we don't have the facts or anything like that, but it looks like when the officer pulled the trigger, there was every intent to pull that trigger to fire at a person.
Well, she admitted to it. She completely admitted to it. So now it's just, what's the motive? You know, do we trust what she says was the true situation or not? And unfortunately, we're only going to get one side of the story.
That's exactly right.
That's the real.
At this point, everything. But ultimately, what we need to be doing, and I think PJ, you made a great point, is making sure how we process this is number one, trying our best not to become obsessed through this.
That's right.
Number two, being able to talk with people in a safe place. And number three, being able to process your emotions, I guess, also in a safe place.
Yes.
And so extremely, extremely important as we go down this road together as a community.
Yes.
Understanding, I think, ultimately, what we want is we want justice.
Exactly. And so in that, I've also taken a look at some police psychology websites. And so here's three things real fast. I know I'm looking at the time. There's three things really fast that they say curbs some of these kind of incidences. So if there's three things that you should see in a very healthy police department in that way, number one is the education level has to be higher about how you handle situations like this, right? Because they test for stuff like this.
And I would say the Dallas police, I think,
it's pretty good.
On the whole, I would say that.
Yeah, I would say that too. Now the second thing that they've noticed lower incidences, what they see is it's higher investment in mental health right? Services and training for the police officers. So education, then the investment in mental health side of it. So not just how you carry a firearm, but also mental health wise, what's your state? What are you doing in this state? And understanding the mental, which is my game altogether. And then the third thing is, and everybody will love this, and we want to see more of this, is the police officers, in order to have less incidences of this, need to be community focused, and the community needs to see you in there and see you as something other than just a shooter. They need to see you as someone who's friendly, who talks to you, because you need to be personalized. When they personalize you, it's harder to do that when you're personalized than it is when you're just a person in a uniform.
Yes, yes. Well, hey PJ, we're running out of time here, and we really want to thank everybody for joining. We sort of just touched the surface on this.
We just touched the surface.
We did, and part of the deal was just sort of like an outlet to kind of just sort of communicate about this. This is like the big elephant in the room.
We're getting a lot of thumbs up here.
Yes.
It's like Paul. Paul is in the house. Paul Stafford. We all know him.
Oh yeah.
Lauren Wiedauer is paying attention as well.
Yeah. And so what we want to do is allow, this is an outlet. We talk about this and everything, and obviously because it's happening in our backyard.
Yes.
We're going to have to keep talking about this down the road, and talk about all the other things we do as well.
Absolutely.
And Ruth Ferguson did add in here, but the cops need to see us too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think if you get involved in community activities, you will see each other, right? That's what needs to happen. So when we see that happen, fewer incidences of this type of thing happens. But right now, it's easy to demonize either side.
And so, and so right now, I think what we all need to do is we need to be praying for the families involved. Or get positive thoughts or whatever your thing is, because this is an awful set of circumstances, and we want you to feel free to share this, pass this on. PJ and I loved it. This is our 13th episode of doing this.
Yes, it is.
This hasn't been our normal topic.
No,
but usually
it touches the law, which is what you do, and it touches mental health, which is what I do.
It does, and so somehow it does all that. And so we want to thank y'all for joining us. We want to thank you for your likes, your sharing, your comments, and please comment down below. We're constantly monitoring this and everything. And PJ, any last words?
Yeah, I would just say, let's don't make things cliches or coffee mug bumper stickers. If we're going to love one another, let's actually learn what that looks like. And then let's also, again, keep practicing grace, man, because there's always different perspectives.
And maybe we need to talk about what does love look like.
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe that is, because I think we really are a brother's keeper in a lot of ways.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Hey, enjoy the rest of your day.
Absolutely.